What happened? They took her. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Because now, I will snatch every motherfucker birthday.
Theory was that at some social gathering, Ovitz, super agent at the time, Simmel running Warner Brothers, they got together and said, wouldn't it be nice to just plug in an Errol Flynn type and call it a day?
Couldn't we create a movie
it?
star?
Yeah.
You know, because they could see that this sort of fare was selling, you know, and the Seagal movies did really good business.
They did, and they were produced for a number that everyone was comfortable with. Yeah. But my question, and this is before, I mean, you probably worked with Seagal at that time. This is before I worked with him. But now the lore that became the Seagal mysticism, and I've got a question that came to us that I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to answer too. But was that created by Warner Brothers, or was that Seagal with his Black Ops community, CIA background? That wasn't ever very convincing, I don't think, for any of us. But
I don't think Warner Brothers did that. I think they went along with it. I think it was sort of Steven's idea, you know, to go along with all that stuff. They did. They did Above the Law. Right? Is that his first thing, Above the Law?
Right. But do you think that they concocted that like over dinner, or do you think Seagal came with that as part of his quote unquote reputation, and they go, we can use that?
I don't think no, I don't think they created that. I have to think that Steven, it's
what, like Simmel just says, let's not look at that too closely.
I think Terry, no. I think Terry and Bob and Michael Ovitz probably could have come up with a better piece of bullshit than that.
You know, that's a great point. They could have. So that means this must have been Steven.
You know,
right? Because those guys are the architects of really well-crafted BS.
Yeah.
Like you don't even know it's BS. Like they can sell you anything.
Yeah.
So that's right. So, but it's just kind of curious because you think at some point they go, do you think he really did work for the Black Ops community? You think at some point it would come up and they go, just don't, never mind. Let's just leave it for him to work it out on the Arsenio show.
I don't think they ever seriously believed it, but I wasn't there. I wasn't part of those. And when I was given this, when I was told this story, it was like, you know, I don't know that I believe it, but it sure it would make sense, because I don't know whoever heard of Steven Seagal doing anything before Above the Law. I mean, usually movie stars have done something. They've done something in the theater. Like Steven never even did Aikido competitively, like Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris was a bona fide kick-ass guy, right? Steve, I'm not aware that Steven was ever that, you know.
So,
but it's not my sort of thing either, and that's not my kind of movie. Like when Above the Law, I did not run to the movie theater to see Above the Law. I wasn't working at Warner's then, but I did not go running to go see that movie. But I became aware of it because Siskel and Ebert were talking about this new star, you know, who does this and that and all this. And then Rod Lurie was doing all those stories in LA Magazine, I think.
Right.
Where he was, and he was calling him Fat Boy before he was really, I mean, he was always jowly, but he started to gain the weight, I think, right before Under Siege, because they hit him under the apron on there. And Rod Lurie kept calling him Fat Boy and stuff. And these are real potboiler scripts that, you know, it was style over substance, you know, but it was, you know, exploitation movies. That's what Steven was doing.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. The Above the Law angle in those early days was, you're right, there was no track record. He had no trajectory that we could detect prior to that arrival, right? He just, boom, he's in this movie.
Right.
And
they created this whole persona about him beyond the Black Ops, CIA bullshitty sort of stuff, you know. They created this whole thing about how he was an Italian from Brooklyn, okay, when he was really Jewish from Detroit. Okay, I mean, that I thought was hilarious too. And I don't think it was Rod Lurie who wrote about that. I think somebody at Warner Brothers was talking about it. about
So
just the ridiculousness of this whole thing that they created.
I'm not necessarily a fan of name calling, and I know Rob Laurie loved to call them names, and I mean, look, he's probably earned an insult or two. But you were insinuating that was right around the time when they did the Seagal. We had to use the Seagal chin light.
The chin light came after Under Siege. Yeah.
And the crew on the Glimmer Man started referring to him.
I remember Rob Grolnick came into dailies. Now Rob was not the executive on those movies. He was doing the Kevin Costner stuff. But I remember Rob was in dailies one day, and it's like he's talking to the screen. Yeah. Steven, you're spending too much time at the craft service table.
You don't talk to me about my time.
And then then they put the little twinkle light. Usually those lights would go above the lens, and they would highlight an actress's eyes or something, That was the idea, was to get someone's eyes to sparkle, but they were doing it under the lens to kind of fill in this area so that you wouldn't see the double chin.
So it's interesting, right? Because so Seagal, he, first of all, on the Glamour Man, right? Again, that was right before I started working with him. The crew called him the Girdle Man,
Yeah.
But he was really good. I mean, what's interesting about this guy is the opportunity was such a rarity for him, and he seemed to completely dismantle it and botch it for himself with this weird sort of abstract point of view of himself that robbed him of any sort of likability. But when he was on the stage at Warner Brothers, he would go out and talk to the tours.
Yes, he would.
Yeah, he would go engage with
when he felt like being noticed. He would put a folding chair next to the elephant doors and sit there with a newspaper, and then tourists would come by and they go, "Oh my God, there's Steven Seagal. Hey, Steven." He'd get up and he'd talk to them, And then days when he didn't want to engage, he would be locked away in his trailer or something like that.
Why no one has made this or put this in a movie is beyond me, because it's so funny. You can see him doing like the Aikido strikes right outside the doors and waiting for the tram to show up and arrive. But the thing, so I
never saw him doing that. I always saw him sitting down reading a newspaper, like he was nonchalantly catching some rays or something,
And there was something, and as if he could read, right? That was the other thing, right? Just to prove he could actually. I know. Okay, I'm sorry.
Your road to redemption is paved with tombstones. No quarter, kill all masters. Go to noquarterkillallmasters.com. Rated R.